Okay, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some current events coming from a cybersecurity standpoint. And the reason I'm doing this recording is last night I was teaching a fairly large class, and I just elaborated on some common sense things, and my students were all saying, "Whoa, I hadn't thought of that. No one out there is putting that analysis out there." And I thought about it, and neither faculty or anyone else I've been exposed to really had put this together. So hopefully make it really short, maybe 10 minutes. I'll put down, like I always tell everyone that I talk to, don't believe anyone. Fact check everyone. And I'll try to put the key Google search terms down below this video when I'm done. So feel free to look into this stuff for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Like I tell my students, do not take my word for it. So we were talking, I was teaching a cybersecurity class, and we were talking a little bit about the Russian Trump connection. And I was saying that I have some reasons to be skeptical of the Russian Trump connection. And the first thing is, let me explain a basic concept first of all, and that is when you have something really complicated, it's easier to figure out who did it. And a great example of a really complicated piece of malware would be SUSNet. And SUSNet is probably 20 times more complicated than the next most complicated code to that date. Also, it had like 6 0 days, which would cost on the open market hundreds of thousands of dollars. So just right there, also look at Nanez nuclear facility, the centrifuges that SUSNet, now to review, you guys aren't cybersecurity students, I should keep that in mind, but SUSNet was a piece of malware designed jointly by Israel and the United States in a cooperative program called Olympic Games. And what happened was Iran was getting close to developing a nuclear weapon, and Bush said, hey, we got to have some other options here besides bombing the crap out of them. So during the Bush administration, he authorized the development of this tool. And so Obama found out about it, and he continued it. The Nanez nuclear facility in Iran that this was targeted to, and it was targeted to a very specific type of programmable logic controller, or PLC, that ran the centrifuges, which is necessary for nuclear production. And the thing is this network wasn't connected to the internet. So what cybersecurity people say about that is it's air-gapped. In other words, it's air-gapped. It's an isolated network not connected to the internet. So if you think about engineering a piece of software like that, that alone is a pretty big challenge, right? There's two schools of thought of how they infected the facility. One is that they infected the Siemens controllers, from their factory in Germany to Iran or somewhere along there, and the other is the Iranian spy, or the Iranian nuclear facility was compromised by Israeli undercover operatives who uploaded the malware off of thumb drives. And most people believe that's the case, which it's too bad it got out if that's the case, because I'm sure they rechecked their contractor list after that. But, so at this one end of the scale, you have something extremely complicated, and that means that that eliminates like your teenage hacker. That eliminates like the underemployed network administrator that's just trying to prove a point. That eliminates almost everyone but state players that have budgets of hundreds of millions of dollars a year to develop malware. So that narrows your list down when it's that complicated. Now, at the way other end of the scale is the DNC Podesta security. And these guys had no security. Now, what that means is that almost anybody could have hacked it. All those other groups like, teenage, I think even Trump tweeted that it's probably some teenager in his basement. And he didn't explain the logic behind it. But when things aren't that secure, you can't eliminate suspects because of the complexity. Now, you can't say the Russians didn't hack it, but you can't say for sure that only the Russians would have that capability. Now, the other thing is that anybody could have hacked it. One thing I find interesting about it is that primary Hillary Clinton emails have not been leaked. Now, 99% of everybody is 100% sure that her emails are out there. Now, we have like 30,000 of her emails, but those were due to the DNC server being hacked and John Podesta, like her campaign advisor, being hacked. We don't really have anything from Hillary's server, which was stored in a bathroom up the road from me a little bit, Platte River Networks. Handled by people that don't have clearances, that are just commercial sector people that landed a great, very lucrative contract of maintaining her email server, which was a homebrew server, meaning they took free software and patched it together. So the you can't really prove that it was such a sophisticated hack that only Russia could have pulled it off. Now, remember, the head of the CIA, John Brenner, and DHS director Jay Johnson, both of those guys were hacked, unrelated. This is unrelated. But they were hacked like a year or two ago by a teenager. Just guessing passwords is all they did to crack into their email accounts. And this is the director of the CIA, the director of the Department of Homeland Security, two of the highest civilian posts keeping our country safe in existence. So these guys didn't really take security that seriously. The other thing that I find curious is that they did not allow the FBI to examine their server. They hired a company called CrowdStrike, and very interestingly, this was largely funded by DNC backers like Google. A lot of you guys know that Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google, was very instrumental in helping Hillary, her data acquisition for her campaign. And a lot of top administrators and things from Google were in the Hillary campaign. So the fact that CrowdStrike was funded by $100 million from Google, and the FBI didn't examine the server is very curious. Then the other thing is that from the Vault 7 of WikiLeaks. Now again, I'm not going to defend Julian Assange. I think it's quite possible that the data he's put out there has been harmful, especially the strategies fighting terrorists and the name of Iranian collaborators that the Taliban got a hold of as a result of him leaking data. So I'm not a big fan of his. However, he has never, in a proven case, lied. Really, if you think of WikiLeaks, all the years he's put in it, the only thing they do have is their credibility. He justified the leakages that we shouldn't have been in there, and if covert ops got compromised, Iranians who were cooperating with the Americans, they should have been compromised. But they were accurate. He has denied that he got that information from Russia. And really, WikiLeaks, the only thing they have is their credibility. If that goes, 10 years of Julian Assange work of getting that site out there goes down the tubes. And also, what we discovered from WikiLeaks was that U.S. Intel has codified the attribution of hacks. Now, we always know, you can hack someone and make it look like someone else did it. That's, anybody in cyber's known that for years. But what they've done is they've created a series of scripts. You just push, probably push a button and say, okay, I want this malware to look like it came from North Korea. Hit the North Korea button. I want it to make it look like it came from China. We'll hit the China button. Well, in this case, if that software is out there, all they would have had to do was hit the Russia button. The other thing, the hardest thing to dispute on this probably is early on, they said that 17 Intel agencies were in agreement that Russia cooperated with Trump, and that's really the charge here, is that Russia and Trump coordinated the leaking of information and things like that. I don't know why Russia would be needed. If Trump wanted to do that, all you have to do is hire some 2-bit hackers to get that information and leak it. You would. There's nothing requiring a state player to get that information. That just came off the top of my head. But we know that the tools are out there to attribute it to whoever you choose to do. And attribution is always extremely difficult. It's always very much up in the air. You can never say for sure. And I'm not saying for sure that Russia didn't do this hack, by the way. I'm just saying that there's not a lot of convincing evidence. The 17 agencies, no one's ever been able to name those agencies. And if you look at some of the people have testified saying that Russia and Trump coordinated, it's people like James Clapper, Google, James Clapper lied, John Brenner, Google the same thing. Jay Johnson hasn't really gone on the record on this, but the fact of the matter is the intel agencies are highly politicized here the last 10 years. So we can't really believe them. And no one's ever produced the 17 agencies that they are so fond of quoting. So if you can't really tell who hacked what, and you can't really, if it's a sophisticated hack, they can change attribution. If it's a non-sophisticated hack or an easy hack, the possibilities of who did it it's hard to eliminate. Now, possibly you could attribute it, provided they weren't using the Tor network or bouncing off another server, or just careful about covering their tracks. But so what's that leave you with? Does that mean that I just give up? You can't tell, anything about anything? No, like building a court case, attribution, though difficult to establish just based on digital evidence, you got to look at other things. You got to take the totality of the evidence. And let's just do that for a second. One of the things that Trump has run on, and one of the things he's been consistent about, is developing U.S. energy. Now, the main source of Russian income is energy. Do you think they would support a candidate who, if they got their way, oil might drop below $30 a barrel? They would be totally impoverished. Not only, of course, would they be impoverished, but so would Saudi, so would a lot of the countries that back terrorism, like Iran. Iran's main source of income. It also impoverish ISIS. Their main source of income is selling oil on the black market. But just looking at Russia, I don't think they would try to get somebody in office that's going to impoverish him. Now, in a lot of ways, the Hillary campaign was an extension of Obama. The very first thing Obama did was remove tactical nuclear weapons from Eastern Europe, allowing the largest expansion of Russia since World War II. Now, wouldn't the Russians want to continue that? They certainly wouldn't want to support a candidate that believes in the buildup of U.S. military strength. And Trump has been consistent on that, and he's already submitted a budget which laid out his priorities, and that's top of the list. So, you know, he promised he was going to do that, and he's delivering on that promise. That, to me, doesn't seem like somebody you would want to get elected if you're sitting in Vladimir Putin's shoes. So, this went a little longer than I was hoping. Went over 10 minutes. I try to keep quick updates like this under 10 minutes. In the future, I'll keep them under 10 minutes. Thanks for watching this, and let me know if you have any questions.